Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello, I'm Colonie Town Judge Peter Crummey, and welcome to Benchmark. We'll explore a variety of issues involving our legal system, our justice system, and how they relate to the citizens of the town of Colonie. Today, we are truly fortunate to have one of the deans of the Capital Region Bar with us today, longtime Colonie Town resident, Jack Tabner. And welcome, Jack. How are you?
Thank you, Judge. Glad to be here with you.
Well, we're so happy to have you here, and I know 30 minutes will never do justice to what we have to talk about today. You've touched so many legal issues in your professional career here, not only in the town of Colonie, but throughout the Capital Region and the state of New York. And I was hoping to at least give our residents a small review of some of the very significant things you've done over time. And maybe we could have a little background about your education and your early years as a young lawyer.
Well, okay, I went to LaSalle Institute in Troy, and after that I had a couple of years in the Navy. And then when I got back after the war, I went to Siena College in Colonie, graduated from Siena, went to Albany Law School, graduated from Albany Law School in 1951. I was very fortunate that I had an appointment as the court aide to Supreme Court Justice Kenneth S. McCaffer. It was a great year for a man just out of law school, and Judge McCaffer gave me the opportunity to sit in on conferences, see trials, sit on special term. In 1952, I went into private practice with Nathan Medlin. Basically what we did was trial work, most of it personal injury work, and I had a very early baptism of fire. First week I was there, I was in Supreme Court trying a case, which was fine with me. At the same time, I ran for public office. I was elected to the Assembly from the 3rd District of Albany County. I served 2 years in the Assembly, and those were in the days when the legislature made all their business by April 1st. I also, in 1953, believe it or not, voted for the first state billion-dollar budget. That was $1 billion. Been considerably higher since then.
You're not kidding. That's true.
So then after that, I was only there 2 years because Albany County went down from 3 assemblymen down to 2 at that time, and reapportionment why the district was completely different. So then I had an opportunity. Mr. Sanford, who was the supervisor at the time, he appointed me as counsel to the planning board. The planning board was a brand new organization, and we were assigned the task of zoning the town. The town had passed the zoning ordinance in 1932.
That's right.
Did some work on it in 1947, but it covered only a very small portion of the town. So we spent a number of years zoning the town, because a lot of it was zoned undeveloped, which meant nothing. It was no control at all. So that took us a number of years, and of course in the meantime we also put in subdivision control when people come in and want to develop a piece of property. We didn't have commercial site control until sometime in the 60s, when we got into commercial site plans. And in 1967 we took what was then a pretty old ordinance and revised it into a local law, and it was a local law that up until just probably about 5 years ago. So that was, and then in 1969, why I stopped being a counsel of the planning board, because I was appointed counsel of the Hudson River Black River Regulating District. But
well, Jack, already in just a minute, you've covered so much ground, and even mentioned some of the titans in our legal community in earlier days. Bill Sanford, of course, the namesake of our Colonie Library, and where we are today. Very special man with 40 years of service, I believe, as our town supervisor.
Yeah. Well,
And then, of course, Judge McCaffer, whose imprimatur was left all over the, not only our village of Menands, but also throughout the county of Albany and beyond, as a very very well respected jurist in our county.
Yeah, he was a wonderful man and a very fine man. And Bill Sanford was a town government personified. He was the head of the Association of Towns, and he was devoted, and he did a great deal for the town. One of the things I wound up doing was to work for the Pure Waters Department, and it seems as though about 1969, 1970, the state had a program, and then that was superseded by a federal program, which came in. And so it was on, going for maybe about 2 or 3 years, and all of a sudden the federal government kind of got tied up because then Senator Muskie had some ideas how he'd improve the program, and basically all he did was delay the program for 2 years. But Colonie, in the meantime, and I was also doing the work in Guilderland at that time as well, both communities, they kept preparing plans. So when they came back to the time when they started doing approvals again, both communities had plans to go ahead. But we had so much work and all that we met at 7 o'clock every Tuesday morning at CT Mail, all the engineers, the lawyers, and the supervisors and whatnot like that. And that was the way we did it, because you couldn't just go with all this mail and telephone calls and things of that nature. Of course, we didn't have email in those days. But we figured that we were going to spend somewhere around $90 million, which in the early 70s, that was a tremendous amount of money. And I can remember Bill Sanford saying, we'll get it someplace. Well, actually, in fairness to the state and the federal government, we did have a wonderful help from them. Part of it was we also kept putting the plans together, and there was a time when New York City and Buffalo were on the verge of bankruptcy. And it was about $700 million that if the state didn't use it, the federal government was going to take it back. So what the state did was they let you do more with the money. For instance, you couldn't build collector sewers before, but now they will let you build collector sewers. So Colonie wound up getting, well, many millions of dollars additional. So, we have very low rates for our sanitary sewers. In fact, Fred LeBrun had an article in the newspaper recently about having a program, and this was a program, and it was a tremendous program, and it did a great deal. There probably should be another program like that, but we can be very proud of what was done in that instance.
Well, it seemed at the time that Colonie was very progressive in making sure that it participated in the federal monies that were flowing for sewer systems. Mm-hmm. Some communities did not step up, and of course now face a variety of problems as to their current development and the problems that can occur when each individual home has its own septic system. I know Lake George, for instance, had an opportunity, I think at some point, to also years ago enjoy maybe a sewer system, and they decided they thought that wouldn't be good for them because it might cause too much development, but now they don't have the sewer system and they have plenty of development.
Well, I happen to live in that area, and I know we had a vote on it in 1980, and we voted in the sewers, and the town board dropped the ball, and we didn't get the sewers then. Subsequently, and just recently, they also had $11 million, and they've dropped the ball again. It's just one of those things. You have to have a certain amount of courage in government. Well, and I don't mean necessarily physical courage, but you have to have courage of your convictions. And Sanford was the kind of person that he could look at something, he could analyze it, and if it was the right thing to do, he would go ahead and just figure he's going to figure it out somehow or other. And of course, Fred Field and Mary Brazel have similarly been the same. But we have the same thing with the water system. I've been doing the work for the Latham Water District now for some 40 years. We first started in, we had 3 million gallons a day that they got from wells. Most of the wells were hard as a rock, and we all had softeners. So we went ahead and built the reservoir over the other side of the river and built the treatment plant over here. But all those things, they all had to be planned. We did the work for the Latham Water District on it. We're up to 30 million gallons a day now, and we have we use the Hudson or the Mohawk River as a source, and it worked out very good. In the sanitary sewers also, we've participated with the Albany County Sewer District, which does a very good job, and I had the opportunity to represent the village of Green Island at that time in doing that as well. So,
Jack, as you moved forward in your legal career, you also became the first chairman of the Capital District Transportation Authority. And how did that get underway, and what do you point to as a success then in those early days?
Well, it started in 1970, and Governor Rockefeller appointed me as chairman of the Transportation Authority. And we had 4 counties, which is the federal area that they set forth. And basically, it was on pretty much of an emergency situation because the private transportation companies in this area were really failing. The county and the state had purchased buses for them. I think it was 100, if I remember the number correctly. But they just didn't have the money. They didn't have the financial ability to keep going. Most of the authorities that they set up in the state, well, we all had the mortgage tax, but most of them had 6 months or so for the mortgage tax to collect. We went in business, and our mortgage tax didn't go into effect for 4 to 5 months, so they had to have a first instance appropriation of $500,000. And the first thing we got hit with was we couldn't have a strike against us, but the traction company was here. Traction company is going to be the main company that we would be working with, and they had a strike. So what the owners of the traction company did was they just turned around to us and said, "You're going to take over this thing, so you take over the strike." So we were a government entity that should not have had any strike against us because we should have been in front of PERB, of course, but as a practical matter, we had a strike to settle, which we did. And I don't blame the employees for striking in that instance. I mean, the wages were pretty low, and that was one of the things that we were able to do was get things up to where the people were getting something near a wage that they should get. But it was a situation, the Schenectady Transportation Company was on its last legs. We took that over. We had to build a garage in Schenectady. We had to build a garage here. Then we also, the Albany-Nassau bus line, that was going out of business. The Albany-Castleton bus line, of course, that was only a small bus line. That was going out of business. And then what happened was we weren't too long in business, and the Troy Fifth Avenue Bus Company, that was going out of business. So, I mean, if we hadn't been there, if the government, you know, I believe in private enterprise. A lot of people say, well, they don't like to see government in business, but this was a business that had to be kept up. I mean, we have a lot of people don't ride the bus. I mean, they never have ride the bus. The automobile is tough competition, and the automobile usually wins in the competition. But there's a lot of people that either for financial reasons or physical reasons don't have automobiles available, and they're not going to have automobiles available. And I forget how many thousands there are, but those people need help, and they need a transportation system. And on the other side, there's also a lot of our commercial people and our industries that they need the people who can't afford or can't, for some reason or other, drive. They need those people for employees. You know, we talk about people being available. Well, if somebody doesn't have the means to get from their residence to their job, whether it's in a factory or a store or in government or whatever, or that's it. So the Transportation Authority really provided and I'm very proud of what's happened. And people will say it isn't a financial success, and I think that's probably correct. But from the standpoint of things, I don't think our area could function if we didn't have the CDTA.
Well, that's probably true. And you know, my dad was one that routinely took the bus into downtown Albany, where his family business was. And as a young boy, I remember there were gray buses and red buses.
Yeah,
I remember those.
That's right. Yeah, well,
and that was just very much a part of our own life. And he thought no other way. Why would I bring a car downtown? The bus will bring me right in front of my store, and I get off and I can come home the same way. And it remains effective today in that way. Yeah. And thanks to your early efforts in establishing and getting the CDTA up and running. Baptism by fire, it sounds like to me.
well, we had a lot of problems. I mean, it was first of all, you had to put 4 counties together. We had 2 political parties that the members had to get together. There were 6 Republicans and 3 Democrats, and you know, many times people criticize it when they see the various groups get together, and but when you get together and cooperate, you accomplish things. And if you just keep fighting with each other, I think we know that you don't accomplish anything. So everybody still had their say, but I think we all realized that we were doing something that had to be done, and we really couldn't have too many disagreements that weren't required. So that was one of the things. Of course, in the meantime, I was also subsequently with the Saratoga County Water Authority. We put a plan together, which never really went through, never really succeeded, but it's the same plan that they're using today in Saratoga County.
Exactly.
And the one thing about it is, if they had done it 15 years ago, they would do it for a lot less money.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about a cooperation in government. It's so vitally important because all public officials are to serve the entire public in that way, in the best interest of the public. You had an opportunity to work for Bill Sanford and also saw the transition in our county from a board of supervisors to the county legislature as well. And I know that you've told me from time to time about how that board of supervisors was functioning and some of the issues that Colonie would face. And I think the numbers far outweighed Bill Sanford's party in the Board of Supervisors. And so that, did you find that system of a Board of Supervisors was worse for Colonie, no different for Colonie, or was the county legislative process a better move for the county residents?
County legislative process was much better. And Judge, you were county legislator for a long time. Basically, the situation was that we had one supervisor. There were 39 supervisors. We had, well, at that time, it could different times, but we had always, at all the times I'm talking about, we had at least 50,000 people. Now we have 80,000 people. So you would have our supervisor there with one vote, and you could have some ward in one of the cities that maybe had 1,000 people in it, maybe 500 people in it, and they'd have the same vote.
Oh, is that right? It wasn't even weighted.
Oh, wasn't? Oh, no, it wasn't weighted.
Okay.
No, it wasn't. Now, Saratoga County still has a board of supervisors, but that's weighted. And the other thing about it is, too, and I think this is very true, the supervisor used to wear two hats. Supervisor was a town official and a county official. But the town official interest predominated. And that I don't think was for the best from the standpoint of county government. And of course, we wound up in Colonie with, well, depending upon the different censuses, but we wound up basically with 8, 9, or 10 supervisors, which was fair to all county because I was in a reapportionment of some of them. Of course, we used to do it with pens and yarn, and or pins and yarn, but now today you do it all with computers. But you know, dividing it up so that you take basically with the 39, it's about 7,500 people for a legislative district. But I think it's fair. I mean, and as I say, you have certainly more experience in the county legislature than I have, but I think it was unfair to Colonie when we had one supervisor out of 39, and we had a much larger percentage of the population. So I think the county legislature move has been a good move for the county. I think it's much better. I think the number of legislators is too large. I think it should be cut down because I don't think we need 39 people. I think we need about half of that.
Well, it still remains the largest county legislature in the state of New York.
Yeah.
And, in that way. And, you know, your discussion about the transition in town government and in the early days of the planning board. And the planning process in Colonie has always been a very significant part of town government altogether. And you served as the first counsel to the planning board. Was that also when the planning board was first conceived at the same time?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
We started and then we had to write all the rules and regulations. And some of the people weren't too happy with some of the rules and regulations, but I think over the years they proved to be necessary and what we needed. And we had some tremendous expansion. For instance, Sears Macy's came in. That was unbelievable because they originally intended to locate in downtown.
That's what I understand.
And they came out and well, Wolf Road was a 2-lane road at that time and had a number of pig farms on it. And Wolf Road today is there. It's a regional shopping center.
You bet it is.
And it produces many tax dollars for our town and for our school districts and for the county too.
Well, it really, as Fred Field always would say too, it really is it helped Colonie become the downtown of the capital region.
Well, one of the things we're very fortunate in Colonie, and that is this, is that we have a varied tax base. I mean, we have a lot of, the residential part of the town is the greatest part of the town, but we have a lot of commercial. We've lost some heavy industry. For instance, we've lost the D&H shops, we've lost Adirondack Steel, we've around and you know, different ones like that. But we've also had other ones come in and replace them. And I know I work in a lot of other towns. I do from the Canadian border down to the mid-Hudson, and many towns don't have a diverse tax base like we have. And you know, it's a situation here. One of the things about it, and sometimes people have to sit back and realize, we have a 36-hole golf course, we have wonderful parks, we have all these items and things of that nature, and you couldn't finance those just on homes. I own a home in Colonie myself, and I understand how homeowners feel, and I've owned other homes. I've been owning homes for over 50 years.
That's right.
But you have to understand that if you want to have a town without a diverse tax base, then the residents are going to have to be willing to pay very, very significant taxes. I mean, I just looked at my recent tax bill I got for January. A third of it's for the county tax, and another third of it's for the fire district they live in, which means that the town got a third of it. And that's for water, sewer, police,
Right.
administration, zoning, highways, and the whole thing. So I think when people look at their tax bill, they have to look at how it breaks down.
You bet.
And all. And taxes, you have to have taxes. I mean, otherwise, I don't know how the government's going to be financed.
Well, your recent comment and mention of Allegheny Ludlam and Altech only further underscores the breadth of your legal participation and throughout the capital region. Not only have you represented a variety of entities, but also you did and have and still do tax review work.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And as a young town attorney myself, you let me sit second chair to you during the, when you were defending the town's assessment, which was being challenged by Altech at the time.
That's correct.
And we were down in a courtroom, I think the old appellate division courtroom, possibly,
That's right.
downtown, during and trying that matter, which ultimately was resolved short of judicial decision. But it only underscores the different types of municipal legal issues that you've gotten involved with over the years.
Yeah, we've done a lot of tax tertiary defense work. We've had to represent a few petitioners, not against Colonie, of course, but that for those reasons. But the whole thing about it is this: is that the assessment process is one, as you well know, that it's a very deliberate process. You have all the appraisals, you have everything else, and the law actually is very favorable to the person who challenges it. Now, the whole problem is it can be expensive, it can be tiresome, it can be stretched out, but you have to defend the tax base in the town. And I'm not talking about just this town. We do work out in the Utica area and like that. And if a town, you know, when people start in compromising it, and one of the problems you have when you go into court is the judge always says, well, what can you do for these people? And you say, well, we can do everything for them. We'll give them a fair assessment. And our assessor's assessment is fair. Well, most of the judges don't like to hear that. But you don't hear assessment cases.
Well, that's true.
But no, they don't. They really think that, you know, well, listen, you can do something here. You know, well, you can't do something, because if you give that person anything more than a fair assessment, then you're really being unfair to the other taxpayers in town. I mean, there's a base there that you work from, and there's 100% of that base, and you have to collect 100% of the taxes. Now, if you take 1% of that 100% and you favor it, you're disfavoring the other 99%. So, you know, the chips have to fall where they may. Sometimes people can't afford the taxes that they have to pay, and that's a sad thing, particularly if it involves the residents. But you don't get into very many residential challenges. Most of them are business and commercial challenges.
Well, they've moved that into that small claims
That's right,
procedure
that's right.
that they developed in the early 80s, and oftentimes many of the single-family residential challenges seem to sort through that process.
yeah.
It's
Well,
certainly more cost effective to the citizen because they don't have to have MAI appraisals to at least bring their case.
Yeah,
Which,
well, we get into commercial and the industrial and Altech, like you say, like that, and all of that. And you want to be fair to them. I mean, listen, it's as far as it's concerned, it can be very objective about it because the appraisers are there, the appraisal profession is there, the law sets up how the appraisals are supposed to be done, and whatever the numbers are that come out, that's what you have to stick with.
Jack, the Supreme Court of the United States has recently rendered its final opinion concerning New York State's judicial conventions. And within the last 2 weeks, that decision was covered by local news media, and you were interviewed as part of that, handling that decision. You've been involved in the conventions for many years.
I've been more years than I want to mention.
And it's very interesting to all of us because the Supreme Court has come out and said, despite challenges from a variety of judges in the city of New York, that the current system authorized by the law of the state of New York satisfies the constitutional requirements, and they upheld the system. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And how long have you been involved in judicial conventions here in the state?
Oh, I've been over 40 years, and I've been the convener for the Republican Convention for over 25 years.
Tell me how you think it works. Do you think it actually results in a good candidate for our citizens?
I think it does. You see, most people don't understand that the delegates and the alternates, obviously they're nominated by the party, but anyone else it wants to, they can file, they can have a primary on it and whatnot. And we've had primary here, and actually, as I pointed out, I don't think it made it in the newspaper article, but last year the Democratic Party had a challenge voting on delegates and on alternates. So, I mean, the people can be involved in this if they want to. The local media said about it's a loss for the people. Well, the people participate. What they have to do is if they want to nominate somebody against the nominee of the party, they have the opportunity to file a petition and support a candidate. And it's on a relatively narrow basis from that standpoint. And the whole thing about it is this, is when you choose the delegates and the alternates, you try to choose people. A good many of them are attorneys, and not all of them are attorneys, and those people come in and participate. Now, sometimes the parties get together and agree on a candidate. Well, quite frequently you have a candidate that you can agree with. Obviously, each party wants to have a member of their party go to the bench from that standpoint. But you know, it's not the end of the world if you agree that somebody from the other party can go. And one of the other things too, these elections are very expensive in the 3rd district. They are very expensive because TV consumes an awful lot of money. So I think it's something. We have caucuses right in the election law. It provides for caucuses. Everybody gets excited about caucuses in Iowa. I mean, well, and there's other states where you don't have direct primaries. And so, I mean, from that standpoint, and in the history of our country, this is what you have, representative democracy, and that's basically what those conventions are.
So you're not surprised that the Supreme Court of the United States ratified, essentially, the judicial convention system here in the state of New York?
I think the surprise was, Judge, that the lower court and then the United States 2nd Circuit both ruled it unconstitutional. That's a surprise.
Right.
What the Supreme Court did was put everybody back on track. And as I say, when the local media said the people lost, well, look, there's nothing greater than the United States Constitution. You know, when you go into service, you don't swear to defend the United States of America. You swear to defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all its enemies, both foreign and domestic. Why? Because much as we respect our flag and things of that nature, the Constitution is what we all live with and what saves all of us and gives us our rights and our privileges. And you know, if they want to change the Constitution and do it in a lawful way, and it is changed, well, then that's it. But the Supreme Court got back on track. I think our local courts were doing what so many of our courts do. They weren't deciding judicially; they were legislating, and they were doing what they thought individually was good for society. And our government is supposed to function that way.
Jack, you're still maintaining a very significant practice of law
Yeah,
here.
I work every day.
In Colonie, and you live with your spouse in Colonie,
Right.
and you have grown children, and your son was my classmate at Shaker High School
That's
just
right.
a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And it's a very exciting time. Grandchildren now?
Grandchildren now, yeah. Well, all four of my children, of course, went to Shaker High, as you know. Fortunately or unfortunately, I mean, we see a lot of our children, but my son's in Massachusetts, I have a daughter in Minnesota, and I have two daughters in Maryland, and that's where the grandchildren are. But we have a lot to be thankful for. I certainly wish they were all close at hand, but I guess I can't complain too much. We were able to get on a plane or drive and see them, so that's it. But no, I mean, and once again, we have a very good school system here in both of our North Colonie and South Colonie. Your product is
That's right.
North Colonie, and all four of my children, all four of them graduated from graduate schools. Three of them went to law school. One got her MBA at SUNY, and North Colonie is well, from the personal experience we've had, and we've had an opportunity to represent South Colonie for quite a few years. And South Colonie, once again, we have terrific school systems here in Colonie, and it's one of the things. Well, you see it when you have clients selling property and everything else. One of the things that the buyer looks at is the fact they want to have the Colonie schools, and I think
Absolutely.
to our credit. I mean, and that's something that makes a community if you have a good school system.
Well, it's also a credit to our community that you've participated so fully for so many years on behalf of the citizens of the town of Colonie. And it's truly a pleasure to be able to have you today and just merely scratch the surface about the depth and breadth of Jack Tabner. And we're so lucky to have you here today. And thank you for joining me.
Thank you for asking me.
I'm Judge Peter Crummey, and thank you for joining me on Benchmark.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.